Welcome, everyone, this morning on this rainy Friday in Dallas. We have a great guest today, all the way from New York City, my friend Linda Gonino. Linda, we've been friends for many years, and Linda is passionate about staying healthy and that holistic approach to great care and wellness. And we're talking about the flu shot today. And do you really need a flu shot? So welcome, Linda. I'm so excited to talk about this controversial topic. I'm a nurse, and I am encouraged to get the flu shot, but I don't. So we're just going to talk about, why are you so passionate about the flu shot?
Hello, Joe. Thank you so much for having me. Okay, why am I so passionate about not getting the flu vaccine? Is I come from a long line of Native American family and military families, and we are basically, through our free healthcare services, we have been over vaccinated. We also tend to die very young especially on my mom's side of the family, which is the Native American side. And I also don't get the flu vaccine.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever had it?
I had it one time.
Mm-hmm.
And I
had it. Flu. Yeah, I know. And my sister is an RN, and she's real passionate about not getting the flu shot either. And she's had it one time, and it was when she got the flu after she had the flu vaccine. So we laugh about it as nurses. But there was an article recently. Okay, there's a lot of conflicting information. When I've been doing my research on the flu shot, because there are a lot of pros and cons, and no, we don't want people to get sick. No, we don't want people to have the flu. I've had the flu, and it's miserable. So, but what is the benefit of that actual vaccine? A study, there was an article in the Washington Post that in 2018 that said the flu shot had only 8% of people that it was effective. So evidently it was the wrong strain. So can you walk us through, how do the manufacturers determine what strain of flu there's going to be for this flu season?
Well, according to the Children's Health Defense, which is the organization run by Robert F. Kennedy Jr., they say that basically there's a room of 15 men, I don't know if they're men, but 15 people who sit and they decide what flu strains are going to be put into this current year's vaccine.
Yeah, and they say it's kind of a mathematical method.
Yeah, I mean, yes. But they say most of these strains that they're coming from the Northern Hemisphere strains. So the people who are in Australia, people who are in, wherever, that they, they're getting those strains, which doesn't really help them either.
Okay. And I know last year, the amount that these suppliers determined that they would have 162 to 169 million doses available for the United States this fall. And flu vaccines annually last year made pharmaceutical companies over $3 billion. There were, and I've gotten conflicting information, but one report I saw that there are 9,000 to 15,000 deaths annually from the flu. Another one said there are 80,000 deaths annually from the flu. But what it says in these it's flu-associated deaths. So when you think of the millions of Americans, flu-associated death, even at the 80,000, when you think, no, don't want to be, our loved one to be one of those 80,000, but that's a small number of people. So talk about that too. What does flu-associated deaths mean?
Well, the main, according again to the Children's Health Defense, they've actually had a lawsuit against the CDC over vaccine safety issues. Specifically, I think it was the Gardasil one. But what they say is that, I've lost my train of thought. What did you ask me?
About what the death-related, the flu-related.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So what they do is they include the pneumonia in there. So what's happening is elderly people particularly, are getting these flu shots, and then they succumb to pneumonia. But they include that in the flu death statistic.
So it's flu-related. So they might go to the hospital with the flu and then have complications like and I know as a hospice nurse, former hospice nurse, pneumonia is one of the leading causes of death in elderly, the elderly population. And, as a nurse, we don't want to, infect patients if we've got the flu and go to work. We're not going to, there are nurses that will go to work when they're not feeling good. I don't personally. But, just talking about hospitals and people in the hospital with these flu-related deaths, one thing I noticed, I read that Medicare will now incentivize hospitals that if all of their staff receives the flu vaccine, they get an increase in their Medicare reimbursement rate for patient admission. And so to me, it's a monetary incentive for people to get the employees to get this flu shot. And just the fact that one of the scientists, this Brendan Flannery, one of the scientists at the CDC, said there isn't much flu in older adults now. We don't see the disease as much as we did. And one thing, too, in this article, it says, even in a good year, the flu vaccine is never as effective as most other vaccines, like the MMR. We don't want to get measles, mumps, rubella. The studies with the CDC say they are 97% effective, but the flu vaccine, 8% effective. So who is benefiting from this vaccine?
Doctors, hospital corporations, pharmaceutical industry. That's who benefits. It's all monetary. It's money. It's really sad because, it's totally unnecessary.
And just as you've taken such wonderful care of yourself, you're a beautiful woman, healthy, you've got the most beautiful daughters. They're just gorgeous. And so how would you say, in a just more holistic way, how can we prevent getting the flu?
I would say the most important thing is to make sure you get proper rest. Probably the most important thing. Of course, always try to eat healthy, organic whenever possible. Having a good moderate, everything in moderation is, I think, is a good rule that still stands. I think it's absolutely essential to reduce the amount of toxic burdens to the body, to the skin, to what you're putting in internally, whatever you're injecting into your body, to keep the body as detoxed as possible.
And that speaking of your body, and we talk so much on the news about women's rights, and I feel like this is a human right. I should not be told that I have to put a flu shot in. If I want to take the risk of getting the flu, then I'm going to take the risk. But it bothers me that there's so much focus on women's rights, but not a focus on, let's just put this vaccine in, in your body. And you know what? It's only 8% effective, but let's do it, and everybody's got to do it, We have a lot of employees from other countries. We're a UN. We employ people from all over the world. And most of our staff, nursing staff and field staff, they do not want the flu shot. And as an employer, I don't enforce it. Now, if I have a client that says, Joe, I only want nurses that have had their flu shot, then I will meet those accommodations. But I will not. I will not force them. And I want to share, when I was a little girl, when I was like 3, my sister, they had started the smallpox vaccine, and my sister was like first grade in Dallas. And she tells the story. She remembers lining up down the school. Everybody was terrified to get this smallpox vaccine. So my sister was brave. She was the only one that didn't cry. Well, about 3 weeks after she got the vaccine, I broke out in whelps all over my body. And the doctors had no idea what it was. I itched. I was in whelps. They had me, I remember, and I was little, but I would soak in this tar-smelling stuff. And I had to wear my baby brother's cloth diapers on my arms and legs so I wouldn't scratch. And it was a chemist. My great-grandfather was a chemist, and my great-grandfather was the one that diagnosed, not the doctors. And even my uncle's a pediatrician. He didn't know what it was, but it was my great-grandfather that said, she has the pox. So I got smallpox through my sister. And when we went back, I had a cut on my hand. We were playing, just little girls playing, and I must have rubbed my hand against my sister's vaccine. So, so I did get it, and that was, they had a point. They didn't know what was wrong. They didn't know, I was very sick. So, and that was a result of a vaccine. Now I know smallpox is a horrible, horrible disease, and it's been eradicated because of the smallpox vaccine. They don't even do it anymore. But, I had a situation personally that affected me,
Exactly.
And just
and that leads to a really good point that I want to make, and that is that I posted a photo yesterday of a baby. He's like 4 months old, whose dad is in the military, came home, had just gotten the smallpox vaccine, and the baby got smallpox. Wow. So the important take-home message is, for example, in the nasal flu vaccine, that's a live vaccine. That's a live virus, and you can shed that virus for weeks afterwards.
So why do some do that nasal vaccine? Say, I read different conflicting things on that too, that it doesn't work, or they may not have it available. So tell me about that vaccine.
Well, I don't know what the point of, why did they invent the nasal one, other than it's just another product and another thing to sell and another way to make money. Because I think it's absolutely insane to not inject, but to spray a virus so close to the brain. I mean, that's insane.
Well, and there was one article I read where this doctor, she's with Mercola Health, just talking about the way these diseases spread in the hospital. It's because the air is so dry in those hospitals. That's how things spread from person to person, and how important it is just to have more humidified air. But you could think, if there's a dry, like they've got this flu mist and they sneeze, well, it's out there in the air, And I remember when I was a nursing student, we had a patient. I was at a hospital working, and we had a patient that had a horrible case of staph all on his arm. Well, I had to go in to check his blood pressure. And so I went to my charge nurse and I said, shouldn't he have a different cuff than the other patients? Because it was one of those roll carts. You go from room to room with a blood pressure cuff and stand. And the charge nurse was like, don't worry about that. And I was like, well, but I'm putting staff on the blood pressure cuff and taking it to the next room. So, how are we going to prevent these germs from going? It's those nosocomial infections, those in the hospital. That's where you're at a higher risk of getting sick. It's not people giving you the flu. It's
I
other.
think the second leading cause of death is our hospital or is it accidents or whatever in the hospital.
I know. And I have a friend right now. It's terrible. She's young. She was a dancer. She had she had to have a hip replacement and did great. Started having pain about 9 months after the hip replacement. And she thought, and the doctor was like, nah, it's nothing. Well, 2 years later, she's still having pain so bad she can't walk. And they have to go in and redo the surgery. And it's because of an infection while she was on the operating table, So infections can happen. The flu is one of the fewer risks. It's really those other infections that you can get in the hospital, So
Right.
what do you advise as far as, say you've got somebody whose employer says, you know what, you got to have a flu shot. How would you, and they say, Linda, I don't want to get a flu shot. What do I do? What are my rights? What would you say to that person?
Well, my understanding is that the hospitals do allow nurses or staff people to not have to get it, but they have to wear a mask. Is that true?
Yes, that's true. And that, it's really frowned upon. And in fact, there was a big lawsuit in Wisconsin because 69 employees who refused to get the flu shot agreed to wear masks, but they wound up getting terminated. So it is true. You can wear a mask, but they are cumbersome. And, one nurse said that wears a mask. I posted something on my Facebook, said she would rather have bad breath and wear that mask than have to take the flu shot. And what they're doing is they make it so difficult. You have to wear the mask from October 1st to like April 15th. It's ridiculous. But you know what? Stand your ground. If you don't want it, don't take it or get another job. There's a lot of positions for nurses in home health and hospice and rehabs. You don't have to just work in the hospital. There's a lot for nurses to do, and educators to do. You don't have to do the, get the flu shot. Talk about the Guillain-Barré syndrome. That is one of the leading risks with the flu shot is getting that Guillain-Barré syndrome. Can you tell me a little bit?
Well, it's interesting that GBS, that it's they in the anti-vaccine movement are claiming that is really polio. That
Wow.
it was polio has been renamed Guillain-Barré syndrome. And it's interesting, like when you start looking at the history of it, of polio and how it started and how it was almost completely eradicated. And then they came out with the vaccine. And then that's when that's when the major part of the polio, not virus, but that we saw.
Mm-hmm. Well, it says here in an article I found that there are more adults receiving compensation for influenza vaccine injuries such as Guillain-Barré syndrome than any other injury covered by the Vaccine Injury Compensation Program. So if somebody does feel, you know what, I got the flu shot, I had the flu, it's been horrible, I want to complain. What can they do? Can they sue? Can we sue these pharmaceutical companies? What is how can we defend ourselves?
Well, in 1986, Congress passed a law that allowed for pharmaceutical industries or pharmaceutical companies can no longer be sued. Period. Vaccines, that is. So as you watch the 1986, the number of vaccines have completely continued to rise and rise and rise. When they passed this law, they also established the vaccine, it's VAERS, VAERS, which is Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System. They believe in, again, Children's Health Defense Organization. They have studied it and researched it, said 1%, they believe that 1% of all adverse reactions have been reported. So just think of the number of people that, have never reported. In fact, most doctors don't even know about the VAERS report.
Mm-hmm.
They don't
Because
even know
they give you a list. I mean, I have a new grandbaby, and I went with my daughter-in-law to his first appointment where he got his first immunizations, and they give a list of, okay, if fever goes to this, give this. If fever is this high, call the doctor. So they know that you're going to have some symptoms. So what is causing those symptoms?
Well, it's the excipients and the adjuvants and the chemicals and the foreign DNA and all the fun stuff that's in the flu vaccine. I mean, it's amazing, the stuff that's in it. It's scary. The research that I've done and that a lot of people have done, it is unbelievable. I mean, some of the things, well, for one thing, mercury, formaldehyde. Why are we injecting formaldehyde into children, to anyone? Why are we injecting mercury into anyone? Why are we injecting polysorbate 80 into anyone? These things all have terrible, terrible side effects, whatever. They're in the flu vaccine are antibiotics, heavy metals, which is mercury, yeast, steroids, spermicide. There's spermicide in the flu vaccine. It goes by, the name is octoxinol. There's petroleum. There is, well, of course, we know the Cocker Spaniel kidney cells. Polyethylene glycol, which is a petroleum product. So not only petroleum, but it's antifreeze, an antifreeze product.
Wow. That is scary. And we don't hear that, That's
And it's, you know what, it's all in the manufacturer's insert. We encourage anybody and everybody, before you get a vaccine, look at the manufacturer's insert, not the insert that is that the doctor gives you, that's the patient handout, but it's the actual vaccine insert.
Well, when I've been doing my research for today, I couldn't even find where the vaccines are actually manufactured. Are they manufactured at our United States pharmaceutical plants, or are they somewhere else? Where are we getting these vaccines?
Well, I don't know specifically, because I also can't find the answer specifically to each one. For example, I studied 5 and really did a lot of research on 5 main flu vaccines. And they don't say that. They don't say, manufactured in the U.S., manufactured. But I do know this, is that most of the vaccines are now being manufactured in China.
Well, and I know I read something that now with children, by the time a child reaches age 6, they've received 72 different vaccines. That is a ton of vaccinations. What do you say to that?
Well, here's a really disturbing fact. The American Red Cross did a study in 2016 on umbilical cords. They found 260 contaminants in umbilical cords, including heavy metals, pesticides, chemicals. So what's disturbing about that? A lot, just if that's not enough, is injecting more chemicals and foreign DNA and petroleum products and spermicides into people. I mean, it's absolutely insane.
Well, and how, if somebody wants to get in touch with you to ask you questions, how can they reach you and just give you comments or want to help with the cause? How can we get in touch with you?
Well, I have a Facebook page and it's just my name, Linda Gonino. I also have my supplement that I formulated over 10 years ago, which is an alkalizing product supplement. And it's basically what it is calcium, magnesium, potassium, and sodium bicarb. And what that does is when the body is very toxic, it's always letting off acids. When the body is toxic with fungus, when it's toxic with any of these ingredients from flu shots, not to mention what we're getting in our air and water and food, the body runs very acid. So I use the expression that our bodies run hot. So what we want to do is we want to balance that acidity with buffering minerals. So anyway, so I have a page for that, which is called myalkasalts.com. I mean,
Okay.
myalkasalts. Yeah.
Can you spell it just for those listening? Maybe
Yeah.
they can't.
My, and it's Alka Salts, ALKASALTS.
Okay, good. Just like it sounds. Okay, and I would love to try that product. That sounds wonderful.
I'll
And
send you a
I've heard a lot about the alkaline, that our bodies are too acidic, and but this has been so interesting, and I'm going to keep researching further. And this is just great to get some information. And we do have rights. We have rights as human beings, and I want to
Absolutely.
stay healthy. I want to be around for my grandchildren and my great grandchildren, and I want to be healthy. And it's just great information that we should be able to have a choice on whether or not to get that vaccine.
Absolutely.
So
I
thank
mean,
you.
this is a free country, right?
Thank you, Linda, so much for your time. This has been fun and so informative, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
All right. Thank you so much for
Thank
having
you.
me.
It was wonderful. Thank you. Great information.
Bye bye.